back in the 70s, and I was born in 1985, and so my whole life I was kind of familiar with this teaching. Grew up in church Sunday schools, and I play the guitar now, but my first band was a church band. I used to play with some first-gen band members in Bay Area, And I remember that one. It's so funny because this member, David Floyd, who some of you Bay Area members might know, and he wrote a cover version of this old song called Secret Agent Man. Do you know the song, Secret Agent Man? Secret Agent Man. He changed the words to Secret Asian Man for reasons you might already know. And so that was really my first band experience, and then I started a second-gen band with my buddies, Jory Cook and Nick Cook, and we called ourselves the Pineapples, and that was my first band. And so, yeah, that was my history kind of growing up in the church, and I thought I would share a little bit about a short version of my journey through ending up to this place where I'm like stoked about what we believe in our faith and our teaching. For quite a number of years, I only wanted to play music. I wanted to just do that, and I had a rocky road with my first blessing. It didn't work out. And sort of at the end of that, I kind of made a little promise with God in a way. I wasn't putting a religious label on it, but I kind of said, okay, God, maybe maybe faith life is not for me, but I still want to be a good guy and do something good for the world. So I can do that through music, I think. So I did nothing with the church for many years. And, I felt that the church wasn't a place that would accept someone like me with such a giant failure on their record. Now, that's what I perceived. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But that's definitely what I felt when I was in my early 20s. So yeah, I got blessed really young. So remember my advice yesterday? Wait. Seriously, folks. And it was really I got invited in by one of my old friends, Joshua Cotter, from the Bay Area. And we are music geeks together. We both love jazz. And does anybody know Josh? Yeah, Reverend Cotter. And he kind of plucked me out of this New York jungle. I was hiding away in the New York jungle. And he plucked me out and sort of said, hey, why don't you come play for the church band? And I was thinking, no way would I play for the church band. What are you talking about? I want to do big, important things. And then he invites me down to the Hammerstein Ballroom. He's like, you might be surprised. We have a bit of a different band now. And then I go and I see the Love and Life band. And so I basically volunteered I just told Reverend Cotter, I said, hey, you know what? If you need a substitute, I'll jump in. Like if somebody calls in sick, I'll jump in. But then within like 6 months, it turned into a regular thing, and they wanted me there every week, and then I ended up becoming the director of the band in a few months. So that was like, whoa. And then, you know what? To the credit of the ministry of the time, I definitely had my heart changed because I realized, oh, you know what? Our teaching, our faith, and our church can be a place that doesn't just eject people when they don't have a perfect life. It can be a place, true parents' love, right, is powerful enough to forgive anyone, isn't it? Right? So it actually made sense. And then I started to open up and I started to realize, I can't really be me if I'm not in the church. That's a big realization. Because I was, full disclosure, I was thinking, well, since my blessing didn't work, I'm just going to have to find a good person out in the world. And in my efforts in doing that, I realized I couldn't be genuine. There's this huge elephant sitting behind me called my faith. It's very how do I just have this life with someone without that part being shared? So then I would try to share that part, and it was difficult. It was like I have to be witnessing to be in a relationship. It's just like, what a challenge, right? So then I realized embracing who I really am I do really believe in this stuff. And that sort of sent me on a journey towards, you know what? And then not too long later, I met Keishu. And that was like the ultimate confirmation. Yeah, this is the one I've been looking for. And that kind of got me in sort of to a certain degree. And then later on, when my music career tanked. Like, I took big risks. I put all my money in a studio, failed, and then, I did the same thing I did in Love and Life, which is, I guess I'll just step in as the pastor for a couple months, I can help out. And then it turned into, I love doing this. It's so exhilarating to do this. Those of you who have that experience know. It's so exhilarating, it's so challenging, it's so awesome. And then all of a sudden I was like, you must read King James Bible, and I'm reading the Bible all the time, and I'm getting all this direction from somewhere. And long story short is, after I studied Jesus for 2 years, you know what? I barely even read any of Father's words for a couple years. I just was so obsessed with Jesus. And then after that is when I went back to go to our teachings and Father's words, and I went, whoa, when you get to know what Jesus was really like, or at least more, you start to really appreciate what we teach. And it's like, wow, I don't know any person or any teaching that is closer to Jesus than this teaching. That's what I realized. Doesn't matter what name you put on it. It doesn't matter what denomination you label it at the top. The teaching itself, the heart of the teaching, that's the closest to Jesus I can get. And that's when I decided, yeah, I want to be teaching this material for the long term, for the next few decades or whatever. So I hope that was that like a little brief history of where I am. So really I'm motivated by all this because of Jesus still, but now of course in my heart it's Jesus and True Parents together, So yeah, with that said, it's kind of good intro for this next lecture, the purpose of the Messiah. We just studied yesterday. I was going to say last week. I'm so used to saying last week. Last week. I guess it kind of was last week if Monday is the first, and it's not really the first day. Sorry. Anyway, so we have the original ideal, which is we were going to grow spiritually through good actions, through faith in what God tells us to do. Pretty simple. We grow and we become these loving, awesome human beings, mature. And then something went wrong along the way. Satan invaded, but he's not a little guy with pitchfork, right? He influenced us, and then we ended up making the decision to go with him. We fell down, and that was kind of where humanity has lost itself. It became totally ignorant. It has no idea what it's doing. And then, so here we are. We need a Messiah. We need someone to save us. And the reason is because the way that we fell was through one person. Really, Adam. If Adam had just stayed strong, there would have been a way to fix things quickly back then in the Garden of Eden. But, he went down in flames, right? He failed. And so, even the Bible teaches us that by one man, everybody died. But by one man, everybody can live again. And so, God is not trying to just raise the level of humanity like this, like everybody at the same time, all the time, and then all of a sudden all of humanity will just get there. It has to be one person that is a righteous ancestor to replace and redo what Adam didn't do. Because it's good to remember, God didn't want to create the perfect earth, perfect society on his own. He wanted to create Adam and Eve. It was like minimalism. It was like minimalism. I'm just going to create Adam and Eve, and then they're going to do the rest. They're going to be mature. They are going to have children and create this. Makes sense, right? So that was the system. God was never planning to, by himself, make millions of perfect people. He made 2 people. So the way we find our way back onto a path where we become restored. And that's one of the things in our faith that we're going to talk about is, the Christian word of salvation. It's become a word that I think is, it's incomplete. It's kind of a selfish word, like as long as I'm saved, right? But salvation in the principle means to restore. The restoration of what was supposed to be. What is the mission of Messiah, and why do we need a Messiah? The essence of history has been to find and establish a new Adam, a righteous ancestor who can then finish the path Adam couldn't walk. And Jesus came to restore what was lost. So here we are. The purpose of life is the three blessings. This is what Adam was supposed to do. It was very high calling, but that's what we were supposed to do. And this is what ended up happening. We're in the middle, and we were supposed to go this way, faith in the commandment, and create an ideal and wonderful world. And really, that world would have been created through parenthood, right? Parents would have created the world. That's why we say we needed true parents. And then back here is where we actually went. We decided to unite around Satan, and we created a false everything. False children who murdered each other right away, and so forth. And now we have hell on earth, right? Wow, that's an intense word. I didn't see that when I was making the slides, but it's kind of true. So here's the diagrams that kind of help explain our position when we are restored through the Messiah. Perfected man should be over the angels, right? Over fallen humankind. Perfected man is the one, this is the original Adam position. It reflects exactly, remember this chart from yesterday? Man over Lucifer. Well, there you go. Perfected man over all of Lucifer's people. Same chart. And of course, Lucifer had a hard time with this, and he didn't want to do this. He flipped it. He said, there's my beautiful arrow coming back. I'm walking. He had a hard time with this. Now, these charts that are being displayed now are my creation, so bear with me. Let's say I told you I didn't make charts, but I did make some slides. Really, it's kind of like when Satan said, I'm walking, and fallen humankind went with Satan, it's kind of like we're over here now. God doesn't have a direct thing going on with us. It's very indirect. It's through prophets. It's through little snippets of truth. But we're really over here. So what we need is that spot to get filled with the Messiah. The Messiah needs to come and be here. Because how are we going to latch back on? We need something to graft onto. And our church calls that, change of blood lineage. This explains restoration, I hope, at least to me visually. Really, that's Jesus' lineage that we're trying to get onto. And he hints at this in the Bible pretty clearly. I am the true vine, and you need to graft onto me. And it's when we leave that relationship with Satan, that loop with evil, the desire to be vengeful and resentment and bitter. Satan is blocked and cannot follow you over here. And let me explain why. The very nature of Satan, remember what the word Satan means? Adversary. The very nature of Satan is that he was the guy who said, I'm walking, remember? As soon as he comes back into the company, he's no longer Satan. He's just the sad angel again. Satan cannot humble himself under Jesus. He cannot, because that's his very definition. I'm the adversary. I'm the guy who's against you. I'm over there. And that's kind of helps explain, I hope, where we're going to go with this is when a person surrenders their life to Jesus, many amazing things happen. Amazing things have happened over the past 2,000 years. I remember an incredible story. The guy who, the Coors, I guess Coors is here, right? Okay, so I don't remember the guy's name at the moment, but the guy who basically created Coors, he had a son, and he was going to take over the company and stuff. And this son has an incredible story. He remembers as a little boy, his dad died. And it was a murder. It was an intentional murder. This guy was just, I guess, I guess he wanted to kill because this guy was so successful, right? Or whatever it was. And he grows up, this is his childhood memory. He grows up and he's rich. He's successful. He's got all his dad's instincts and business prowess. And then it led to alcohol. It led to drugs. It led to just obsessing over making more money. He remembered that he had a saying in his life at that time, which is, I know exactly how much money I need to make. And people would ask, how much? And he says, just $1 more. Just $1 more. Here's a multimillionaire, but just hooked. Remember when we talked about addiction? No mind-body unity. Just $1 more. And that was his path, and it turned into depression. It turned into alcohol and all kinds of other things. And he was at the lowest point of his life, extremely wealthy. And then he had sort of this realization, kind of hoping that God could answer his questions, turn him around. He had this realization, I need to forgive the man who killed my father, because really, I never processed or got over that. And so what he did was he went to the prisoner. He was in jail. He got convicted in there probably for many decades. He went back and visited that guy. And he said, look, I forgive you. I forgive you for killing my father. And it's only because of Jesus that I can do that. And then the man eventually got out of jail. And then he continued to meet with this guy and teach him about Christ. And he got converted and became a follower of Christ as well. And actually to this day, they still fellowship in the same men's group. It's a powerful story. And that was through the power of surrendering your heart to Jesus. Satan can't follow you. He can't tie up your heart anymore when you do that. There's the value of tying yourself into the Messiah. So when fallen man can get underneath here, that is when we are becoming new and becoming restored. So really, this is such an important way of understanding Jesus and the Messiah, which is there's a lineage element. We have to become, in a sense, reborn. That's a Christian concept. We have to be reborn and be new people. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless it remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So rebirth means change of blood lineage. And by do nothing, it's pretty intense, but it's really true. We're not really free. There's a great Bible verse that says, in the Spirit of the Lord there is freedom. You're not really free. And it's so funny because Satan has tried to claim the idea of freedom for himself. You're not really free until you rebel against your church. You're not really free until you express yourself in any way that you feel like today. No, that's not true. Okay, if you're free, go be free. Go be free from drugs. Go be free from your phone addiction. Go be free. You can't. Actually, so the Messiah is the source of this freedom. The real freedom is being free from doing the things we don't want to do, from sinning. Go live in a world without wars. Go ahead, be free. You can't do it. But we could do it if we bring humanity to God's Son, the Messiah. So, this process, it's actually the inversion of what Satan did, right? Didn't I have a cool little arrow going the other direction? Satan said, I'm walking. Well, mankind has to say to Satan, I'm walking. I'm walking. I'm going to do the opposite out of your world. That's why Thomas Jefferson and all these great thinkers would say, resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. You have to disobey this. Many times, disobedience here is actually what obedience here looks like, or the other way around. Real obedience to God will often look like total disobedience to Satan. And this process is so important. When we're going to start to study briefly about Jesus' lineage. You know, we needed a perfected man. How does this person show up, right? In a fallen world. You have all these fallen people. How does a perfect person come out of a fallen world? It's a very amazing question. And the Christian concept is just partially on point, but there's so much more. I think a lot of the mainline Christian theologies is that because Jesus was born without sex, because there was no sex involved, Jesus was perfect. And the connotations of that message is so damaging. Oh, to be a really pure person, you shouldn't even want that. And really, what the principle explains is that his perfection has a lot more to do with his lineage. And the reason all these stories are in the Bible are to help describe what was happening in his lineage. Does that make sense? Bathsheba. Why is Bathsheba in the Bible? Right? She went over to David when she was already married to this guy, Uriah. Why is Tamar in the Bible? Tamar, incestuous relationship with her father-in-law while engaged to his son. You know, and I have yet to hear, and I listen to a lot of preachers to get inspiration and learn the Bible better. I listen to a lot of preachers. And I have yet to hear an explanation of why is this in the Bible? What is this? It almost becomes just like, well, it just shows that God can love anyone. You know, but that's kind of a quick apology. That's an apology, right? It's like, eh. But actually, the principle explains that Tamar is an incredible hero. An incredible hero who really helped create a lineage for Jesus, and I'll tell you why. The fall happened essentially from Eve leaving a man she was engaged to. Remember? She's kind of engaged to Adam, right? So that was her destiny. And she left the man she was engaged to go be with Lucifer. So it's very restorational that Tamar would leave the person she's engaged with, the son, to go have the child with the father-in-law, Judah. She dressed up as a prostitute. I don't know if you know the story well. Dressed up as a prostitute. That's like sketchy behavior number one. Lied to him, pretended to be, you know. And the full story is amazing. We took more time with it. But she ends up sleeping with Judah and having the baby. And then they were about to stone her or whatever. It cost her life. She risked her life. But she was able to convince Judah because she kept a couple of his items, like his seal and his staff. She kept a couple of his things. And they were about to stone her and be like, you cheated on my son. And she's like, oh, well, I think I have some items that could help explain who the man that I slept with is. And she pulled out his stuff. Imagine she has like his glasses and his wallet. It's this guy that and then Judah got punched in the face. I'm pretty sure he almost fell over, you know. And then he was like, no, you're right. And he confessed, I was going to marry you to my son, but I really wasn't going to do it. He actually had in his heart that he didn't want that marriage to happen. And she knew it. She felt, you're engaging me to this son, but you don't really mean it. It's not. He was way younger than her, and time was going to pass where she wasn't even going to be able to have a child. So she felt from God, I must have a child in this family lineage. It must be. And she was willing to risk her life to attend God's deepest lineage-based desire. Deepest desire to create the foundation for Jesus. So she risked her life to do it. It's kind of interesting because the reason the father-in-law didn't want Tamar is because he thought she was like some cursed woman, right? Because she was engaged to the eldest son and he died. And then she was engaged to the next brother and he died. And it literally says God killed them. God slew him. Like the second son didn't want to have conjugal relations with Tamar, so God killed him. Pretty serious. So husbands, love your wives, please. It's no joke. And I thought this was so amazing. Why didn't God just kill Hitler, right? Like, just kill Hitler, right? Like, that's the easy fix to our problems. See, God can just get rid of you. But imagine, more serious than Hitler was Tamar's lineage. More serious. That's why God could come in and say, no, this ain't going to happen. You're out of the picture. You're out. And so same thing with Bathsheba. She left an engagement with another man to go be with King David. And, Jesus was called the Son of David, right? The lineage of Jesus was being prepared. And, think about Jesus' arrival on earth. Where does Jesus first arrive on this earth? Like, look, when did your life begin? Where were you first? In the womb. Where you started as a conception. That was the first place. And so God needed to use something to create a restorational experience. We're going to talk more in detail, but I thought I would go on a tangent now. And that was really the amazing thing Tamar did, which nothing that she actually did, but that's the meaning behind the story of the two twins in the womb, where the one sticks out the red thread, and then there's the reversal. It was a symbolic reversal in the womb. It was a symbolic, I'm walking. The proper order that Satan has developed is now being reversed. And then it was through Tamar's lineage that you could have a pure and sinless womb that God could claim. So that's, Jesus' perfection comes much, much, much more from his lineage. And the connotation that it just came from a sexless event is so damaging, is actually very damaging. And the biggest point I want to make about this all, that I want to tie in later, which is to show you something. Restorational activity is not the same thing as the ideal. Tamar, in the ideal, would not have to do all these things, dress up as a prostitute. But she was attending God's deepest desire. She was doing something heroic according to restorational needs. The restorational is not the ideal. And just to take a quick tangent while we're on it, I think it's something that we all need to think about when we think about people that are going through their lives and it doesn't look ideal. Is that person maybe going through something restorational? And did you know that in a way, the sin going this way and the restoration coming back the other way, they look really similar. It's like, no, this looks like a hand and this looks like a hand. It looks the same. Tamar's adultery on some surface level looks the same as Eve's adultery. Same act, same sin, but in the other direction and following the desire of God. So we must understand. It's so funny because I think a lot of the disappointment and emotions that we feel growing up in our church is that we're taught so much about the ideal, and then we look around and we don't see a lot of ideal. Even our church leaders, right? But we have to think, is that person maybe going through restoration, or is that person just simply aiming to be ideal? Right? That's something we need to check our heart with. So the mission of Jesus, let's get back to it. So the purpose of salvation, I really love Jesus, but we have to point out that even since Jesus, there's been a lot of sin. We're not perfected in our hearts. There's still a need for religious life. Remember, we said we wouldn't need religious life if we got to the top. Well, we still need religious life. Children are born with original sin. That's why there's a need in the Christian faith for rebirth. Every time a baby is born. It's like, what was that baby doing in the womb? Smoking and drinking in the womb or something? What was he doing? He didn't do anything wrong, but we were still born under Satan's claim. And there is still a need for the return of the Messiah. And that's a pretty kind of obvious why would the Messiah need to return if the whole job was already done, right? We're still very imperfect people. We still need. And another point is 2,000 years, more than that, thousands of years, God is preparing for Jesus to come. Prophets and all these people talking about Jesus coming. Why prepare something for thousands of years if it was supposed to just die in 3 years? Right? So we have to talk about this. This is a really important area of the divine principle. Was Jesus' death on the cross God's will? You know, I had a renter that almost rented from our church. And he loved the building and all this stuff. And then he texted me about a week later. He said, "We're no longer interested." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, you teach that Jesus failed." He just must have looked it up on Wikipedia. And so I want to get into this next lecture and show you that is actually not a true statement at all. But I said, it's okay. I think he was kind of a low baller anyway. And then somebody else on Saturday just floated in, so it was fine. God got my back. We're going to look at Jesus' words, we're going to look at the disciples' reactions, and we're going to understand prophecy all around the topic of the cross. I mean, I think a pretty convincing thing is just look at Jesus' words. Let's find out what he thought. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness about me. So does it sound like he's telling the people, hey, go ahead and nail me to the cross? Or, hey, believe in me, the scriptures are pointing to me. Yeah. Jesus answered the work. He was answering to someone who said, hey, how do I be holy? What do I do to do God's work? He said, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. Another quote toward the end of his life, physical life. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who killed the prophets and stoned those who sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. So clearly, Jesus' desire is to unite the people, gather the people, and be with the people. Would that even today you knew the things that make for peace, but now they are hid from your eyes because you did not know the time of your visitation. It's my notes here says, Jesus is not happy about this. It's clear. It's clear. You didn't know the time of your visit. You don't know what you're doing. And even on the cross, he said, you don't know what you're doing. Now, what gets people kind of, so if you just looked at that, you'd say, well, it's kind of clear that Jesus may have not wanted to go to the cross. And even in the Garden of Gethsemane, at the very end of his life, he prayed, is there another way I can do this and not go to the cross? So Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane was literally in a conversation with God, addressing the potential for another destiny. There was some other destiny, some other path on Jesus' radar, all the way up into the end. But where doctrine for thousands of years gets a little messed up and confused is how we've decided to interpret prophecy. On the left side is just a few quotes that basically said, the Messiah will come and he will rule. He will reign. The governments will be upon his shoulders. Exalted, son of David. Oh my, one of these is, any Jewish person in a foreign land, 10 foreigners will be clinging to the arm of one Jew saying, please take us to your land. We heard the Messiah is there. World famous rock star level at the time of his being alive. And actually, I didn't know this till recently. There are 60 prophecies in this category. That he's going to be exalted, he's going to reign, he's going to heal the people, unite the people. And there's only one or two over on this side. There's 60 over here, only one or two on this other side, which says Jesus will be rejected and killed, and it's through the way that he will be killed that will heal and atone for people's sin. by the wording in that Isaiah quote is, by his stripes, meaning his whip marks, by his stripes he will heal the people. So a lot of doctrine has a hard time explaining this. So what they say is, well, this means that was the first coming. First coming gets destroyed. Second coming comes back to do all the ruling and all the awesome stuff. But the divine principle explains it a little differently, and I think in a way that makes a lot more sense to me, which is the concept of dual prophecy. This is very aimed at understanding the Bible. Why are these two prophecies in existence? One says live, one says reject and die. And this is I left off the verse number. Sorry about that. Jeremiah 18, 17, I think. If at any time, this is God talking, if at any time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down, and destroyed, and if that nation I warned repents of its evil, then I will relent and not inflict on it the disaster I had planned. And if at another time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be built up and planted, and if it does evil in my sight and does not obey me, then I will reconsider the good I had intended to do for it. It's a pretty big disclaimer. If I prophesy through my prophets that I will build up your nation, but you don't fill your role, the human responsibility. Remember the word that I'm going to say 1,000,000 times? Responsibility. If you don't fulfill it, I will reconsider. I'll change my mind. It's in the Bible. This is a great quote for any Christian. In more quotes, if Israel has faith, you will be the head and never the tail. If not, you will be the tail and never the head. What happened right after Jesus died? Israel got crushed. Jerusalem got dismantled, totally obliterated, flattened to the ground. Does that sound like Israel had faith or not? Right? And there's so many more of these. Deuteronomy 29. If Israel is destroyed, this is a really beautiful long quote, but I shortened it. But I'll tell you, if Israel is destroyed and all the nations of the world are wondering, why has God destroyed its own people, his own people? The answer is, it is because they broke the covenant. If the people of Israel ever get flattened or destroyed or removed, it's because they broke the covenant. And it turns out that they did get destroyed only 40 years after Jesus died. Jesus himself. Some people say, well, Jesus himself predicted his own going to the cross. But it's very important. There's a huge distinction between Jesus' first year and second year of ministry and Jesus' third year of ministry. In his first year, he was saying, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And then he said so many other things, like all those quotes I read you at the beginning. The harvest is ripe and the laborers are few. Some people say, well, it wasn't the first coming's job. The harvest wasn't ripe. He said the kingdom is at hand. The harvest is ripe. That means the season is now. But the laborers are few. The human portion of responsibility is failing. It's the laborers that are few, not the harvest's fault. Later, he told the Pharisees, he was, ticked off at one of the Pharisees, as he often was, at the end. And he's like, why are you shutting the gates to the kingdom of heaven? That means the gates were open. The gates were open at the time of the first coming. It was in the third year, and this is amazing. I think this was the divine thing from God. This is amazing. In the third year, it even has the word began. That's why I bolded it and italicized it. I really want you to see that word. From that time on, later in his career, third year of ministry, from that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things. He just began it at the end. And that he must be killed on the third day and be raised to life. The disciples did not understand any of this. Its meaning was hidden from them, and they did not know what he was talking about. So why didn't he say, hey, I just need to go to the cross, guys? Actually, you shouldn't follow me very much at all, because if you follow me too much, you'll ruin my mission, because I need to just go die. Right? Why didn't he say that? And now I got to tell you this little anecdote. I wasn't even planning to tell you, but this is really amazing because it made me laugh so much. Jesus announced his public ministry in a synagogue. I don't know if you know this story, so I'll tell it to you. He's in with the Pharisees, the scribes, and he's doing a church service, a Hundake service, if you will. And they hand Jesus a scroll, and it's the prophet Isaiah. Oh, I'm wrong direction. Let me show you. It's Isaiah. They hand him the scroll of Isaiah. There's a lot of prophecy in Isaiah, right? So he unrolls the scroll, and he reads Isaiah 61. And he says, and Isaiah 61, 61. Isaiah 61 says, he will be exalted, he will be ruler, he's here to save the people, the kingdom is at hand, that kind of prophecy. He goes and reads Isaiah 61. But one DP lecturer gave me this nugget of insight that he received. Actually, if Jesus was only here to die, he should have unrolled the scroll and stopped at Isaiah 53. And he should have announced, so let me slow down this story. When he reads 61, he says, the Messiah will come and save the planet, save all the people and heal everybody. And then he closes the scroll. Do you know what Jesus says now? He said, what I just read, those words are talking about me. Kind of a movie moment, the way he's very, I imagine Jesus is a very theatrical guy. All these healings and he must have had a flair for theater. He reads this scroll and he closes it. Yeah, it was a mic drop. He's like, by the way, what we just read, I'm that guy that we just talked about. And of course, that didn't go too well, but I give him a lot of credit for the theater element of it. I mean, that was one heck of a way. You know how people say the way they want to quit their job, they want to do something, to quit the way he announced his ministry was incredible. But think about this. He skipped over 53. Why didn't he stop at Isaiah 53 on the same scroll of the book of Isaiah to say, by the way, by the stripes I will heal you. I'm going the way of the cross. He didn't stop at 53. He went over 53. He went past 53 on the scroll. He went past it. He could have stopped at 53. So the guy who was telling me this said that every time he tells this to Christian ministers, they just get their mind blown. And then he says, look, Jesus skipped it. Jesus skipped it. Skipped it. He just kept hammering it in. He skipped it. There was his chance. There was his chance to tell everyone what was supposed to happen. He skipped 53 to tell them about the Lord is here to save you by unity and harmony, and believe in me and support me. Bring the kingdom now. And then at all these ICC conferences and ACLC conferences, every time he tells this lecture, in the lunch lines afterwards, all the ministers are getting their mashed potatoes and stuff, and they're pointing to, he skipped it. Yep. Oh, he skipped it. He skipped it. It became the one-liner of the whole workshop. He skipped it. So Jesus' prediction is very clear. I lost my little place. So what should have happened? What should have happened, really? Believers would have been at Jesus' feet, right? Believers would have been following Jesus. But where were all the laborers? Where were they? They were sitting at the feet of John the Baptist. That's where they were. Actually, there are some reports that say that accounts that say John the Baptist had a million followers, that's a heck of a lot for no internet, no phone, and no nothing. How did he communicate with a million followers? I can barely keep track of, 100 people in my whole sphere of existence, right? A million followers. That's where Jesus' laborers were. That's where they were sitting. And so that's why the principal makes a huge amount of content on John the Baptist. That's where Jesus' people were. There they were, sitting at the feet listening to John the Baptist's sermon. He will go in the spirit and power of Elijah. You will go before the Lord to prepare the way for him. So there was a very clear direction. It's amazing. John the Baptist's mission was to be in the spirit and power of Elijah. And this was given to him, this was revealed to his parents. His dad, Zechariah, had this incredible vision of angel Gabriel, and it spooked him so much he couldn't speak for a week or two. He was mute, remember? That's a powerful vision, no joke. Your son will be the Elijah to make way for the Lord, to prepare the people. And what's amazing is not only did Zechariah know it, his wife Elizabeth knew it. When John the Baptist was in the womb, and Mary, so they are cousins. John the Baptist and Jesus are cousins. And so her sister Mary comes over and, oh my God, Mary's pregnant. And then when she comes over, John the Baptist jumps for joy in the womb. Jumps for joy, and it's recorded in the Bible. Oh my goodness, my son is elated with joy and inspiration from God, and he's going to, your son is so special, and they are going to be together. And so the joke that flew into my mind when I read this is, John the fetus knew everything perfectly well. John the Baptist forgot. John the fetus was better. John the fetus was better. Sounds similar, right? In Malachi, this is an Old Testament prophecy. This is like the last words, basically, of the Old Testament. I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before that day of the Lord comes. So the people knew Elijah was coming before the Messiah, and Zechariah and Elizabeth had the vision. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children towards the fathers, lest I come and smite them with a curse. And there's another one. Again, John the Baptist is coming, and he's going to turn people's hearts. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to smite you with a curse. It's very important to keep remembering that Jerusalem did not do well after Jesus' death. The greatest religious leader of Jesus' time. He was so awesome and so inspired. He ate very minimally. He wore simple clothing. He preached with all this power. And many, many people thought, I think he's the Christ. He must be the Christ. But he wasn't. He had the same mission as Elijah, and he was the second coming of Elijah. So it's very important to understand, people, they thought Elijah, actually it's amazing, in the Old Testament, Elijah was kind of understood to have gone up into heaven on a chariot. There was like a vision. And so there was an understanding that if we see Elijah, he's going to be coming down on a chariot. I don't see a chariot, that's not Elijah. But the Bible teaches that he comes in the spirit and the power. The spirit and the power. The same mission, the same spirit of Elijah, but different guy. And this is going to help us understand Jesus and the second coming when we get to that. Okay, we might need to take a break pretty soon, but I'll just finish the Elijah part really quick. So here's God's plan for restoration through Jesus. It was going to be Jesus, and then it was going to be John, and John was going to be the guy, to be the mouthpiece to the world. Elijah was expected to return before the Messiah. And people are wondering, okay, why are you saying you're the Messiah, Jesus? Because we didn't see a chariot and we don't see an Elijah. You're a fake Messiah. And then Jesus' response was, I tell you, Elijah has already come. And they understood that he was talking about John the Baptist. If you are willing to accept it, John is the one who is to come. John is the Elijah. But John denies his mission. They asked him, are you Elijah? He said, I am not. Now that's crazy. To me, that's crazy. His dad knew that he was. What happened? What happened?
A guy who has 1 million followers has to now become a follower.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty much it, isn't it?
I think he had a hard time sitting in the stands for Jesus when he was so used to being brought up as a
It's got to be.
powerful mover.
And isn't that so similar to Lucifer and Adam? Right? So similar. That same dynamic. I'm going to humble all this greatness that I have. Saint John the Baptist is such a misnomer. Saint, he is not a saint. He is not a saint. He did one good thing. He testified to Jesus at the Jordan River. He said, oh my goodness, he's the one. One time. But the number of followers that John the Baptist actually gave to Jesus, maybe 1 or 2 out of potentially millions of people, right? That'd be like, this is probably a bad example, but that'd be like, Tony Robbins. Does anybody know Tony Robbins? Okay. It'd be like Tony Robbins saying, hey, Pastor Mike and Adonia, they're the one that I gotta support. They're the ones I gotta make big. And he says it one time at one conference, and then they get like 20 likes on their Facebook page. And that's it. That's it. That's not a saint. And what's so sad is that he even said to Jesus, or even said, well, I knew this was the Messiah because of the sign of this dove. I was waiting for a sign. This dove came down and it was the one. But if it weren't for that, I did not know this man. What do you mean you didn't know him? He was your cousin. And he grew up 5 miles away. And as a fetus, you knew who he was. Something went wrong. This is amazing. When we look at the failures or the course of John and Jesus, there's so much resting on the parents. The parents knew the players on the on the board. Mary knew her son was the anointed one. And the story of Joseph? Man, that story is incredible. He's engaged to Mary, and she goes and says, Joseph, I'm pregnant. Mid-engagement. And you're not even allowed to touch or look or nothing in those times. So he's like, oh my God, what happened? And he couldn't handle that. Joseph was knocked out, right? But you know what happened? The angel Gabriel came to Joseph and said, look, this is a good thing, just go through with it. Come on, just stay in there. Do this. So Joseph goes through with it. It's not his baby. He's probably asking her, well, who the heck was it? What happened? What's she going to say? Holy Spirit? I don't know. But here's this funny thing I never realized till recently. For Joseph to keep this thing together with Jesus, he basically has to take the blame himself. Because if she commits adultery, that's a pretty big sin. You can stone someone to death for adultery. What, is he going to let his bride-to-be get stoned to death? The angel Gabriel said, go through with this, meaning raise this child. So Joseph had to own up and say, okay, I did this. And in that time, that was a big sin. Calling off the wedding in Jewish culture, like, oh, the wedding's off. We're already about to have a kid. The date that was set has to be changed. Oh, huge, just societal, total taboo, right? Totally. And you know what? Joseph, imagine this. Joseph had to go to Mary's parents. Mary was probably just a teenager, pretty much. Joseph had to go to Mary's parents and say, I got her pregnant, and we messed up. And in those times, he probably got beat up. You're going to get severe. And he probably had to go to his own parents and say the same thing. So I heard one person teaching this lecture, and he said, there's one thing wrong with the nativity scene in Christmas time. There's the nativity scene of baby Jesus. There's one thing wrong in every nativity scene. Joseph needs to have a broken nose going sideways, and he needs to have a couple of black eyes, because he got punished for that, something he didn't even do. So that was so sad that Mary and Joseph knew what Jesus was supposed to do. Zachariah and Elizabeth knew what John was supposed to do, yet they don't even know each other. And they really lost faith in those visions. So who would people believe? John or Jesus? John had high priest status. Jesus was born very lowly. John was well educated. Jesus was uneducated. And it's kind of funny because Jesus is from a part of that area that was kind of like the hick area. So imagine, some guy comes in with a thick Southern accent, Hey, man, all you people around here, you got to listen to me. I'm the Messiah, man. It's like, imagine, low class, low educated guy telling you that he's the one. That's hard to believe, right? Hard to believe. But they could believe a well-educated, high-born person. John lived a model life of faith. Everybody admired John's life of faith. People thought, this Jesus guy is too radical. He's radical, man. He's a heretic. He's a heretic. He was healing on the Sabbath. He was doing all this stuff you weren't supposed to do. And John goes his way apart from Jesus. Are you the one, or should we look for another? That's what John's saying about Jesus at the very end. At the very end, still doesn't know. Still doesn't know as much as John the fetus knew. So the result of John's disbelief was Jesus appeared to be a false Messiah, and Jesus is left to find support for himself. The stages of Jesus' public work. Speaking, so we talked about this earlier. In the beginning, he's talking about the kingdom of God. In the second part of his public work, he's facing all kinds of danger. His life is in danger. And toward the end, it's pretty clear the people have not believed in me. The people have not believed in me, and I have to go the way of the cross. Jesus attracted people who had little education or influence. Yeah, if you're a hick guy with a straw hanging out of your mouth and tobacco on this side and all this stuff, you're not going to impress the high-born people. He performed miracles to gain more followers. And the political and religious leaders felt threatened. We got to pause here. Political leaders and tyrants all through history are always threatened by religious movements. Because religious movements say, wait a second, I'm ruled by God, not you. You can rule something, my tax forms or something, but tyrants and rulers always try to pull their power to the max. And eventually they say, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill you. And guess what? Only religious people say, go ahead and kill me. My God tells me that if I live a spiritual life now, I'll be rewarded in the spiritual world later. Go ahead and kill me. That's why political leaders, big government, big tyrannical systems hate religious movements. Hate it. It's a totally contradictory, and even right now, that's what's going on in China. You can't have a communist regime and a people that believe in God. It doesn't work. That's why China's been burning down megachurches. There was a megachurch where 50,000 people used to attend, and the government came in and demolished it. Because that is a problem. Go ahead and kill me. Even True Father's words said that. I'm getting this from True Father's speeches. He said, tyrants and governments do not like religious movements because we're crazy enough to say, go ahead and kill me. We're that crazy because we're so sure that there is a spiritual reality. And Jesus' own disciples began to lose faith. even all the way up into the end, the prayer in Gethsemane. My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. He's addressing that other destiny. I was supposed to do more. And God's original and primary will for Jesus is lost. And Jesus accepts the way of death. Now, here's where I must pause, because I have heard unificationists oversimplify and get this part mixed up. Jesus failing would have looked something like this. I don't want to die, and I'm getting tired of my mission. I'm going to go retire into the hills of Switzerland and live a comfortable life. I'm done with this. I'm going to run away. I'll start a little church out in Germany. Jesus failing would have looked like running for his life. But remember, there are two kinds of prophecy. There was some actual legitimate weight behind the prophecy that he had to die for people's sins. God had both plans in mind. He was hoping that the people would have faith and we wouldn't have to use plan B. So when Jesus is in that garden, he's praying to God, look, I hope, can you give me more opportunity to work on plan A? Can you give, I want to build the people up. I can stimulate faith in them. We can do this. And God is basically saying, look, there was a certain time period to do it. These people have totally rejected you. And so Jesus, not out of weakness, and now this is an amazing thing. Most Christian theology will say his prayer in Gethsemane was just him being weak. Oh, the burden of sin was too painful and heavy for him to face. And he had a moment of weakness. And I would have understood that. I understand a moment of weakness. Sure, I have that every time I see a donut, you know. I have a moment of weakness. But I want you unificationists to really get this one. As unificationists, we are defenders of Jesus. We don't believe he had a moment of weakness. He was a sinless man. He totally united his mind and body. We love Jesus, and we are the defenders of Jesus, and he did not have a moment of weakness. He had a moment of negotiation with God. Can I continue working on plan A? And God said no. And so Jesus said, okay, Father, as your will, I will do it. We are the defenders of Jesus. There is no teaching that gets closer to Jesus' heart than this teaching. Jesus dutifully, obediently went the way of torture and the cross and death because God told him, you know what? If your life cannot be used to build the four-position foundation, if your life cannot be used to create the ideal on earth now, then your death can be used. If you do it dutifully, if you do it with true love, your death can be used to save people. That's what God was telling Jesus. Your death can be used. And so Jesus went this way on purpose, dutifully, because he wanted even his death to count for something. And so Jesus went the way of the cross. So Jesus will always be remembered as a man of true love. Because even on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. The real victory of Jesus is not on a piece of wood. The real victory of Jesus was inside of Jesus' heart. That's the location. The cross should be replaced with a heart. That's the symbol. Because inside of Jesus' heart, he refused to let hatred into his heart. You know, in a principle, we have a phrase that Satan exerted his maximum power to kill Jesus. I'd like to expound and explain that. When Adam agreed to do the fall willingly, Satan could kind of say, look, look, God, Adam and Eve are kind of mine. They believed my word over yours. So he could bring Adam and Eve into a spiritual death. When Satan killed Jesus, Jesus gave Satan not even an inch, not even a hair of his own heart. He never believed Satan. He only believed God's word. He never grew in resentment. Even True Father said that if Jesus had had even one little emotion of bitterness and resentment in his heart on the cross, he would have failed. That shows you how pure and amazing the quality of Jesus' love was. So because Jesus gave not one little inch, not one little hair did he give to Satan. Not one little hair. And you know what that means? When Jesus killed him, it was like a foul. It's like a red flag in soccer. It was like, whoa, you crossed the line. Look, this guy never went to your side, and yet you took him. So that is what enabled God to have the power to resurrect Jesus. Whoa, you crossed the line. And the power of the resurrection is so amazing. Think about this. Jesus died alone with no one, basically. Yet, a few months later, he has thousands of followers. What happened? The resurrection happened. He resurrected, and finally people believed. Finally people believed, because the resurrection was so powerful. They couldn't believe before, but they did believe after the resurrection. And there was this, people getting on fire and the Pentecost happening and, miracles everywhere, Jesus appearing in rooms with his disciples. And there's one sermon that Peter gave. He gave one sermon, 5,000 people joined. And that's not a fairy tale. Because I was told by an old member, he was sent over to Africa to go give a unification seminar. And he goes into the middle of some nowhere, Africa, right? And it turns out that there's so much religious oppression that all the Christians were gathered into one village. And the whole street, it was one street, but it was full of churches, just a bunch of Christian churches. And so this missionary went there, gave a lecture, and gathered all the people, just went door to door at all the, hey, I'm going to have a seminar. About 12, maybe more, lead pastors showed up to the seminar. Their congregations, if you put them all together, was probably about 50 to 60,000 people. He gave one-day workshop. The next day, they said, Reverend McCarthy, I want to speak with you. And they gathered a meeting. He's like, oh no, what's going on? Are they even going to let me leave this country? Am I a blasphemer? Are they going to kill me? Are they going to put me in jail? They looked very serious. And they gathered around a table, him and 12 ministers, and they said, we want to bring all our churches under Reverend Moon. How do we do that? 50,000 people, one day workshop. So when I think about that, 5,000 people in one sermon can happen. That's what happened after Jesus resurrected. So the victory of Jesus, guys, I want you to take away that we are truly desiring to know the heart of Jesus more than any other people before. Father really did. No one understood the contents of Jesus' pain in the garden. No one understood that pain until True Father. So I hope that you could take that away with you. That's the end of our Jesus lecture. If you want to, we could do a discussion if you have thoughts. I love to hear your insights if you have energy to share them. Go ahead.
I actually have a question about the virgin birth. I had an English professor in a class of mythology who said that only one of the books of the Bible talks about a virgin birth because that disciple was Greek, and in Greek mythology, the gods are always born not through sex. Like one was thinking about a god and it came out of their head, something like that. And I've tried to cross-reference that, and I haven't been able to figure it out because it is mentioned in Isaiah and other places. So just wondering if you had heard that, if you have anything to explain it.
I haven't heard that, but I have heard. Do you want to respond to that? But
Well, there was something about a mistranslation in the Jewish society of the time, the word meant an unmarried woman,
Yeah.
not virgin. And it was translated into virgin because it served certain purposes.
Because in Matthew he says she was a virgin before she was pregnant, but then in Luke it says he was born of a virgin. And I think they were saying that Luke was Greek or of Greek descent, and that's why he put his spin on it, because that's how gods are made. I don't know.
What I understood is that Zechariah was very high prophet, to the point where, you know, someone came to say when you were going to even have John the Baptist, they were like, this guy's going to be a mega church, you know, leader, and struck him dumb. And coincidentally, Mary's there, and she gets pregnant in the house of Zechariah, and we call it Immaculate Conception. Principally, it may make sense that John the Baptist and Jesus aren't cousins, but maybe they're half brothers. And it restores a Cain-Abel relationship. But my understanding was that they had to say that it was Immaculate Conception, or that Joseph had to take the burden, because if it was Zechariah that was discovered to potentially be the father, then it would have destroyed some big, you know, whatever they had going on at that time. And I understood there were like different factions of Jewish people that were actually like, some of them wanted to like go to war against the Romans, and then other ones were like more ordinate to want to follow the rules, and so this would have collapsed something, and so they went and lied about it. That's a lot there, but claiming Zechariah to be the father, but that's how I understood it. And with the Immaculate Conception was around protecting Zechariah more so than it was immaculate, but that was highlighted.
But they didn't really say Jesus was immaculate. Everyone believed Joseph did it, so it came later that they said he was born of a virgin. That's what I was wondering.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I remember hearing that that was like an important part of the prophecy of what made Jesus a Messiah. Was it that was like a pre-qualification? So it's like really important to Christianity. I think that he was. It's like kind of a deal breaker, because at the time, that's what allowed him to claim that he was something like that. So that's
a really good
so
point.
Part of one of the prophecies. I don't know which ones. You know prophecies better than I do.
There's a lot in Isaiah about born of a virgin, but it doesn't say that she was a virgin at the moment he was born.
Yeah, my default was always like, you can be a virgin and then have a baby. You know what I mean? And there's this, you can have sex one time, you know, and it's kind of, it can make sense to me. Not to mention thousands of years of translations and all that, but you know, the thing is, yeah, the prophecy might say Jesus needs to be sinless, born sinless, and the only way to reconcile that is, well, you can't have a fallen man and a fallen woman creating this sinless child. So there needs to be the Holy Spirit. God, Jesus is God. Jesus is divine and sinless because there was no fallen seed in there. That was a Holy Spirit seed. But Christian theology, there's a gap there. There's a gap. Why? Well, it never explains why Mary is not well, then what about Mary's? So Mary is half of the equation. Okay, Holy Spirit's half, but what about the other half?
Lineage is supposed to travel through the man.
Oh, that's, yeah, right. Maybe that's what their thinking was.
So the
Yeah.
lineage can go through the man, through the seed of the man. So that makes sense that people would start to, as Jesus gained popularity maybe
Yeah.
later on, and they're like, well, hey, how does this make any sense? How can he be the Messiah? His line, and then there became an Immaculate Conception.
I'm pretty sure Jewish culture is matriarchal though, that is through the mother.
Yeah, that's
The-
true. That's a really interesting point.
Oh, that's right. Lineage through the mother in Jewish culture, isn't it? Yeah.
So if a Jewish boy marries a Gentile, that's a big no-no, but a Jewish girl can carry it on if she
Yeah, so
That's right.
yeah, some gray area there.
So, I think laying the principle, one time I talked to my father and tried to explain to them about what's wrong before that. My parents were very strongly Catholic. He had a barrier to understanding which centered around the fact that how could Adam and Eve marry if they're brother and sister? It was just a roadblock. So I understood through that the tradition of doctrine based on fallen lineage puts barriers into man's psyche internally to do with sex. So they just couldn't get past that, regardless of everything else. In the same situation, the birth of Mary, any concept when you equate to what Jesus is as the Messiah, any consideration of sex in that equation triggers the fallen side. And that's why through history there's this decision of deifying Jesus, so he has to be outside of that. And it's fundamentally because the connection between his mission and the physical world is separated because he went on a spiritual direction. And the whole restoration of Trafalgar makes that connection again between Jesus and now. The problem still remains, and that's why we have this original sin, the book is still.
Yeah, the ramifications of sexless origin of this sinless person is huge, because then your religion will always be about an individual save me God, you know, I need to be it. But really what's amazing is if you go to where we're trying to go with the principle, which is it is Adam and Eve, and the original purpose was to have a marriage with conjugal love being at the centerpiece of it. It creates a religion that upholds men and women as the crowning jewel and goal of history and goal of God and a goal of our spiritual journey. Whereas that's not the goal of your spiritual journey as a Christian, in a traditional doctrine. So that's the sad thing, because a family, a strong, enduring family, is the main cornerstone of an enduring society. You can't have good society without these tight-knit, strong, committed families. But if your doctrine doesn't really address it so much, how are we gonna be stronger? How are we gonna get there? So this part is kind of big in its ramifications. I don't believe the principle states anything that denies Jesus' sinlessness from birth. And it doesn't go into, let's get to the bottom of what really happened to Mary. It just leaves that alone and says, Holy Spirit and Mary, there's a child. But what we emphasize is that the sinlessness doesn't come from, there was a miraculous Holy Spirit. The sinlessness of Jesus comes from all that restorational stuff in the lineage. That's why it's and that's really logical to me. Otherwise, there's not much reason for Tamar to even be in the Bible. I don't get it, I just don't get it. But when you understand restoration, that concept, then, that's where Jesus' sinlessness comes from.
But even with Tamar, she wanted Judah's seed.
Yeah.
Right? So there's some transformation. The generational lineage must come from the woman, but there's something about the man's seed that made it so important that it wasn't Tamar just saying, I need to get pregnant. It was Tamar saying, I need to get pregnant
With this
from
specific.
a man in this family.
Yeah.
And, says God killed him twice, but
Yeah.
there could be some unhealthy spirit world involved in that as well, trying to fight Tamar from being able to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been some other action there. And so perhaps who the father was of Mary might have hurt the true image of Jesus, and so it had to be I don't know. My mind's kind of blown actually by this. By that.
There's definitely some. There's got to be some weight to the man's side because the prophecy was all about son of David, and
Sure,
so
but
there was something going on.
But there's
on
so
that
much
side.
true, like that's so true in Judaism, which is who Jesus was, born and raised, that the lineage comes from the woman, not from the man, because they say you always know who your mother is.
Well, that should kind of go towards talking towards this concept that, well, if that's the case, then how did Mary have Jesus sinless, right? Well, does that mean Mary was sinless?
Right. Or that it just came
or does that mean somebody
generationally.
else was sinless before Mary?
But maybe I think the point that it was like generationally, Tamar created the foundation so that a sinless womb could exist in maybe a fallen person. Like it didn't have to, father or mother could both be sinful but still create sinless, based on the generational foundation.
Yeah, that's a whole lecture we do on restoration, right? Where we talk about. Oh yeah, go ahead if you want to. Yeah.
The lineage passes through the man because of Adam. The lineage through the woman, traditional Jewish, is because the Jewish people can claim the descendants if the mother is Jewish. So even the mother marries a Philistine or something else, the Jewish people can claim that lineage. And this is like God claiming away from Satan. So it's not that the lineage is going to the man or not. It's the Jewish tradition of how they expand their one people under God concept, because even the women go somewhere else. They can claim it.
I mean, you're talking about what's in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Right, and
But not just the Bible, it's the actual physical Jewish people today.
right, they do
Yeah.
as well, right,
Right. And in the Bible, it's like that because of history.
right,
When they conquered people, right, even though they intermarried, the children born of the Jewish women were claimed as part of the Jewish people.
right.
I would argue this definitely sexism, so the men could run around during wartime and have stuff happen, but not actually claim those children as Jewish or take responsibility.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We figured it out early.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been an interesting discussion. We've gone like way over what I had planned, but if it is stimulating, then you keep it going. But I think it's a good time to take a little break, maybe a 15-minute break, and then we'll come right back.
I
Yeah.
thought it was just entering at the
Juiciest part of this. No.
break, no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we were supposed to end like 20 minutes